The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Breaking humanity, one soul at a time. This is The World You Don't Know radio show with your host, Nick O'Connell.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome along to this week's edition of The World You Don't Know. I do have a guest lined up. I'm going to be calling him on Skype now in the next minute or so. I've got a gentleman called Brian McCarthy coming on, who's from the Anti Eviction Task-Force. I'm sure you've heard of them. Brian deals daily with family home evictions, banks, courts and emotional pain. Brian has been doing fantastic work helping people in fear of losing their homes, from banking, repossessions, evictions. He will also be speaking at the upcoming Open Minds Conference in Dooley's Hotel, Waterford, on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th of March. Now, I believe he's speaking on the Friday, which would be the 2nd. I think he's in the early evening, so between 3 and 6 I think he's speaking. I think it's 4, I'm not sure, but we can check in with him now in a moment. Anyway, as I said, Brian is going to be coming on for the next hour to talk about the evictions in this country and what's going on in this country in regards to evictions. Now, I did have a guy on a few weeks back in relation to evictions as well, having a slightly different angle on it from the Land League, the Mayo Land League. All these people do great work, Brian and other people like Brian. I'm going to go straight to Brian because I don't want to waste any more time, because it is a very important subject and it's one that needs to be spoken about. Anyway, good evening, Brian.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm not too bad. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad.
That's great. Listen, thanks very much for coming on to the show. I don't know if you heard the beginning of the show there, because I've only dialed you in there now a second ago. You're going to be appearing at the Open Minds Conference on the 2nd of March, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm looking forward to it. There's a few lads kind of similar to myself that will be talking about the banking scam, Davy Walsh. Barry, then another lad will be talking about the history, some of the state and some in law and banking. So I'm always interested to hear Barry talking myself and others. I had a great time there last year when I just attended it. Ian Crane, Mark Devlin, Terry Lawton blew me away with his presentation there last year. So I am looking forward to the 3 days. Yeah,
it was a great conference last year. Now, I was at the conference last year myself. I got down on the Saturday afternoon, so I'd missed Mark Devlin, unfortunately, but I've had the pleasure of interviewing Mark Devlin a couple of times on the show. So, but I still raged that I missed his presentation, because I know it was a very good presentation. Now, I know he's doing this Sunday this year, so hopefully I'll catch that one. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'll obviously get to meet yourself down there as well if you're there. So can you tell me, Brian, what is your background and what got you involved in this, in the Anti Eviction Task-Force, and what is it exactly that you do?
Well, I started kind of basically in 2007 when I saw what was going on in Ireland and in Europe, and what I believe to be a much created banking crisis that stemmed out of the Federal Reserve from 97, and then a lot of people were brought into the court process, and I started learning kind of a lot about the court process and affidavits and data access requests and stuff like that, and I became horrified with what I saw to be going on in the courts daily to do with civil matters, which is all we deal with, family home evictions, all that the Anti Eviction Task-Force deals with. But as I travelled around the different registers courts and circuit courts, and even today, Supreme Court, High Court, Circuit Court, Registers Court, 100% win rate basically for the banks, regardless of we doing our best over the last 7 years to learn the law as best as we possibly could. But the more we've learned, the more the system has basically just stuck their fingers up at us. So literally now at this stage, with people under threat from eviction, it's just up the walls daily. We have a good crew in Anti Eviction Task-Force that deal with people who are really in a bad way emotionally. Their health and wellness is in serious trouble. Again, 99% of people we're trying to deal with first are trying to get them over the kind of daily barriers that are in their way, which for a lot of them is trying to feed their kids with what the country has been subjected to. and the austerity measures, and it's just absolutely now gone off the charts.
Now, when you look at what's gone on in this country over the last, we say 10 years now at this stage, I mean since 2007, 2008, do you think it was like pre-orchestrated, that it was well planned, that they were going to do this to Ireland?
Yeah, like this is a UN agenda for me that's going on in probably 200 countries. You'd see a lot of activism going on in a lot of countries. There is a good bit of activism going on in Ireland, but it's on kind of a very individual basis. Currently, there was a lot of strong groups around in 2009 and 10. But again, the system may have infiltrated a good few of them, and kind of conquer and divide is a good tactic. But there's great people around the country, and the education that's shared between all the people that are involved in kind of the mortgage crisis, the courts, what's going on with the sheriff. Like there's an awful lot of Irish people involved here with the different asset management companies that are orchestrating the evictions, and like I will be exposing a lot of who's who at the Open Your Minds conference, which will interest a lot of people, I'd imagine, because an awful lot of ex-detectives, defence forces. It's outrageous what's going on currently, and like we can't get into, the mainstream media do not want to say what is going on. They're not reporting on, there's 141 evictions every month. Nothing in the mainstream.
I haven't seen a damn thing in the mainstream media about this. I mean, I grew up in an Ireland where we thought evictions was a thing of the past, that it was something that went on during the so-called famine.
Yeah, well, they're going on daily. Like the most recent one that we had, horrific, where KBC Bank, a family came home. The dad came home first. The wife, who was a teacher, and 5 children came home shortly afterwards, and military started doing it with dogs, surveillance equipment, mercenaries basically, across their front garden, having the sheriff apparently had been there previous. No one saw her. Sinead McNamara from Cork. But again, the guards have been involved in this from the outset, planning the eviction, and it's a civil matter. The guards can't be involved high up or low down in any of this. But we find that the guards are just, saying, "Oh, we're here, we have to do our duty" and stuff. But
yeah, well, you sent me a video this morning, Brian, which I thought was very telling, because I live in Crumlin in Dublin, and I grew up in the south inner city. If I was to walk around where I grew up with a balaclava over my head, I can guarantee you there'd be guards all over the place within seconds, wondering what was going on, why I was walking down the street wearing a balaclava. Now, the video you sent me this morning was of an eviction. There was guards present at the eviction, but there was also a bunch of guys wearing balaclavas.
Yeah, that's attempted eviction in Carafin, and Tommy Collins was a very vulnerable man when we met him. And we happened to be in his house there. You'd see 5 of us in the video. One lad landed just as it happened. If you watch the video, you'll see that the guards brought some of the fellas in balaclavas. You'll see the car in front with the wedges blocked out. You'll see an ex-detective called Mick Murphy out of Roxburgh Station in Limerick, pretending to be the court messenger who's never worked for the court services. Yet you'd find that GSOC recently wrote back that, like I've some level of paperwork in that, whether it's in the court with the powers that be in the Dáil, and GSOC come back and said that the guards did nothing wrong. So GSOC are saying that it's fine now for the guards to bring fellas in balaclavas to family home evictions, which I'm not finished with yet. I'm not leaving that lie that they say that that's fine and good.
No, it's not.
Like they had no paperwork, like many more evictions, no paperwork when it came out to the site, none to date, and that was in May, the 20th of May 2016. Like I had been at a good few evictions before that, but the lads there with me outside of one, it was their first time, and you can see, the bit of adrenaline in it. But like, it's absolutely outrageous if the police can bring fellas with balaclavas to do family home evictions, and that it's accepted in this country. Like that video has something like 850,000 hits on it, and no outcry. It's still ongoing. That man is still in his house to date. There is attachment and commitment proceedings for myself and that man threatening us with jail for not obeying a court order that was never there in the first place. And there was a serious amount wrong with the original court case, where that man never attended court, but the court messenger, who he knew from the area, said that he would look after everything for him, and that ended up with a possession order and then with an attempted eviction in that manner.
It's absolutely terrible. I mean, what would have happened to that man? I mean, you said he's still in his home now, but what does the future hold for him? Is he still under threat of losing his home?
Well, like, since the formation of the state and before it, the system only relies on one thing when people take a stand against anything, and that is violence, whether that is to take your freedom or to come in heavy-handed. That remains to be seen, but like, all we can rely on at this stage is every day, no matter what case it is that we can just lodge paperwork with what's wrong, and hope that someday someone will stand up and say that we're correct. Like, no solicitors, barristers have come in to help us. No one from, we're a grassroots movement, affiliated to no parties, but there's not one politician has come in to help us anywhere. None of them attending courts, as you know, most of them are landlords anyway. In a crisis, like, we have a homeless, a housing and eviction crisis, like, that is just so ironic.
I mean, I was just about to say that. I mean, you know, you hear politicians beating on, doing their sound bites on the 6-1 news about homelessness and what they intend to do about it and whatnot, and at the same time, going unheard of in the media are evictions, and not just the odd eviction, but in the hundreds.
Well, like, there's an average 7 every working day of the week. Like,
there's actually 7 families losing their homes every day.
Yeah, like, you'd even see in the last quarter there in 2017, there was 1,072 more legal proceedings issued in that 3-month period. So that's basically another 1,000 families that, you know, 72 might come up with some solutions. We're trying to deal with the banks every day to create solutions. They're having absolutely none of it. KBC, Bank of Ireland, AIB, Permanent TSB, you know, like, they should be under serious pressure there with what has come out about the trackers, and the variable rate mortgages are overcharged, probably 75-80% that have been forensically examined. And yes, you know, they treat people, families, like criminals, whereas we need to drop that and start kind of uniting up into communities, the braver people. It is a hard thing to stand up.
Well, it is when you think about it, because, I mean, for an average family to try and go into a court and beat the banks and do it properly, it's going to cost them to go to 30 or 40,000 in legal fees with a good barrister. Isn't that the main problem, that nobody can afford to actually hire a barrister? Because, one, they can't afford to pay the mortgage anyway, so how the hell are they going to afford a barrister?
Well, the barristers, even when they're taking cases, they're not winning against the bank. So, you know, we have huge problems here. The best of lay litigants in the country, who are well educated at this stage, and some of them have even gone back to UCC and Trinity to learn law. Like, they're not even getting traction in the courts. Like, people have dedicated the last 6 and 7 years of their life to this and learning all their Act statutes and court rules, but, like, there's no. I often explain to ordinary people that you're going in and you're playing against Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Bayern Munich, and you're the smallest house in the parish, and you have to face them up. You have absolutely no chance, and, like, people are so drained of their energy just trying to get through daily life and work and keep the cars on the road, bring the kids to school, insurance, tax. They're just absolutely drained, and many haven't even the ability or the energy to open the letters that are coming in the door. They don't understand the court process, and yes, those who do understand the court process are going in and being absolutely hammered inside in the court, regardless of the standard and high quality, a lot of it, of the law that they brought to the table with regard to the banks. You know, there's serious breaches of contract there. You've the European laws that they're absolutely flouting completely and utterly, and you'll find when you get to the High Court there, like, anyone who goes up to the High Court ends up with Noonan or Gilligan, and they're literally the hangmen inside there. And you might be doing well with your case in another court, but next thing you'd be added onto their court list and just off with your head, basically, regardless again of what you put to them. Like, people are trying to engage with banks and make deals with them, but the banks are having absolutely none of it.
So the banks are not interested in dealing with anybody?
None that I see. Again, like, if you look back to insolvency and things like that, it was done up to 3 million. So again, it was to suit the fat cats, the previous developers. So again, you know, the insolvency practice basically holds you to be a slave, and if your circumstances change over a short length of time, which is a lesson we should learn from, you know, 2008 and before it, we were promised that this was kind of, you know, never going to end, and it was an endless, like, if you look at the money that was loaned out between the year 2000 and 2008, it just cannot be repaid. Like, 1 in 3 cannot pay back what was borrowed. 1 in 3 is robbing Peter to pay Paul. And 1 in 3, we have a lot of civil servants in this country, and a lot of them are paying, and they're just earning just over the threshold to make them homeless. But, you know, recently you see a teacher sleeping in her car with 2 children. I was horrified even there that the teachers' unions and stuff didn't come in to help that lady in Galway. And every night there's people sleeping in cars. There's been guards sleeping in cars. There's people living in absolutely desperate conditions that we see that, you know, have no money for repairs, whether it be something basic, even like a washing machine and things like that. And these are people that are working every day of the week. So there's just no talking to the banks, and there's no solution.
I read an article many, many years ago. You mentioned Agenda 21 there earlier on with the United Nations. Now, I haven't read the whole article because it's thousands of pages long, but I did read a few relevant bits. And one thing that stood out most from me was that the plan for Agenda 21 was to remove private property from everybody on the planet. So that means basically taking everybody's homes from them. Would I be correct in thinking that?
Yeah, exactly, and it's to make absolutely everyone a tenant. And as you know, here in Ireland, tenants have absolutely no rights. Like, you've some rights if you stay in your family home and refuse to budge. If you've tried to deal with the banks and done your best to pay to the best of your ability. As I said, some people just can't afford to pay. But there's, like, the agenda is fairly clear now, you know, of what they're doing over the last 50 years for me, if you could go back and read through the Agenda 21 stuff. But they've really escalated the threat. Like, they've created war on children of the country here, putting them out on the side of the road. There's 3,194 children in emergency accommodation, 1-star accommodation, curfew. It's very similar to The Pursuit of Happiness, that film, if anyone has seen it.
I have, the one with Will Smith.
So sad that this is going on in a country like Ireland, and that we've kind of lost our compassion and care. You know, like, you've the hidden homeless tenant hotbed, which could be hundreds or thousands of more children that we don't know about. That are, like, that family there, they were evicted, the 5 children. Like, I had to see them go to bed in a stranger's house on couches, you know, under makeshift kind of duvets and blankets and pillows and all school clothes and stuff. Like, that was kind of the lowest ebb for me, to have to watch that, and to see mercenary units brought in from out of the state to do that eviction. Horrific. Like,
so you're saying they're bringing in foreigners basically to evict Irish people from the homes? I mean, this sounds like the Black and Tans.
This is the Black and Tans. Liam Deegan wrote a very good post, The Empire Strikes Back, and it explains a lot of the story that went on in Cork without naming names. But we had a list of the names of the security, and they are ex-British soldiers, serving RIC members, ex-PSNI, and, like, when you look at the companies involved behind it, you know, like, top Irish civil servants, in the companies that are controlling, I believe, everything that's going on. It's like, it's absolutely outrageous, and, like, it is a daily struggle. But there's fantastic people around the country in every county that, you know, I can just pick up the phone to her, message. A lady rang me today there, and I can just ring up a lad in her area now who'll help, and there's other lads in there who will fall in around her and kind of guide her through what, you know, the situation that she's in. And like everyone's story is unique, but there's no one out there that I know is a strategic defaulter. There's many paying to the best of their ability, but they just can't. The money just cannot be repaid, and the system knows that the same as we know. But Goldman Sachs are controlling everything through the IFSC, through John Bruton, who's the head of Indair, who you never hear introduced as the head of the IFC. And again, this was orchestrated from the beginning by the banks. The Bank of International Settlement is, at the top of the tree in all of this. And when you look at what has happened with Anglo-Irish Nationwide, I see one of the directors there today got 20,000 fine. A drop in the ocean for something that cost the state something like 5.4 billion alone, the Irish Nationwide stuff. And their mortgages then went into Anglo, IBRC, and then onto vulture funds. And when you look at some of the vulture funds there, now the banks, the bailout banks and Ulster Bank are 76% of those on the court list. The vultures are only 24% at this point in time. But the banks are trying to wash their hands of everything and pass them into the vulture funds. So basically they're not responsible for what has gone on in the past. Yet Bank of Ireland, AIB, absolutely horrific.
Well, listen, that's something I want to get into when I come back. I need to go to a quick ad break, so do you mind hanging on for about a minute or so?
Yeah, no.
That'll be great, folks. We'll be back in just over a minute with Brian McCarthy. Talk to you very shortly.
Broadcasting to Lucan, this is Liffey Sound, 96.4 FM.
Don't miss Eddie Graham's sports session this Tuesday as he takes you through all your local sports news on Liffey Sound 96.4 FM.
A Year in Music, the show that plays the hits from the 60s to the present day. Every week we play hits from a new year with me, Paul Gibney, on Liffey Sound 96.4 FM. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m.
Hello, my name is Brian Hughes and I'd like to invite you all to join me here on Liffey Sound 96.4 FM every Thursday evening from 6 to 7. I'll be playing some of the very best in traditional and folk music on my programme Ceol Galore. I'll be featuring some of the best new releases and we'll have interviews with musicians and singers who were involved in local, national and indeed worldwide projects. So until then, from myself, Brian Hughes, Gunyairi and Talat, August Slán go fóill.
You're listening to Liffey Sound on 96.4 FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. The text number is 087 062 7138. That's 087 062 7138. Now, we're going to go back to Brian. Brian, just before the break there, you were talking about banks transferring mortgages. I was under the impression that if you had a contract, me and you had a contract between each other. You lend me £100 and I agreed to pay you back 125 over 5 weeks. You don't have a right to pass that contract on to somebody else without my permission, do you?
Yeah, there's the code for transfer on mortgages, and basically they have to give you written and inform you of who they're setting on the loan to. Now, our own solicitors were greatly at fault here from the beginning because we got no legal advice. We just got basically a closing agent and something that was sent out from the bank. And they didn't go through the terms and conditions like sign away or power of attorney. And there is hidden clauses in there basically saying that they can assign or transfer it or securitize it, set it onto someone else. But it has to be by the code on transfer of mortgages, with your informed consent. Now, if you look at who some of the PTSB loans went to, just take that as one example of a vulture fund. And when you get behind Sheldon Finance and a few of the others that Permanent TSB and Michael Noonan sold them onto, they're the Cargill family were involved in terrorism all over the world, arms, same with Cerberus there, who own 110 odd companies, vulture funds, arms dealers of the highest order. So, what family man or woman is going to agree to their family mortgage of their home, something as valuable to them as their family home, to be sold on to terrorists and arms dealers? If I know this, Michael Noonan knows this. They're buying them then for pittance. So again, why aren't they offering homeowners the deed? the government could quite easily step in. The saddest thing here is that, like as I said already, 76% of those on the court list are the bailed out banks and Ulster Bank who were bailed out by the English taxpayers. And, you know, it's the government are behind the family home evictions if they have control over those banks, not so much Bank of Ireland who operate on a royal charter and outside of the whole system.
But can I ask you, Brian, with the bailout, I mean, the bailout was, what, I'm not sure the exact figure, but it was 60, 70, 80 billion, whatever it was.
64 billion, but then there's interest costs and that, and like they're burning money in the central bank there every year to do with that, as Dermot O'Flynn from Ballyhay explains regular. But like they've crippled the taxpayer with the austerity measures, and then the banks they bailed out are now throwing people out of their homes.
But this is the thing. I mean, if them banks were bailed out, should not every mortgage that was in trouble be written down then? Because of that, the banks have been bailed out. They've been paid off.
Yeah, and they have been paid off, and they've, you know, their big game of this is claiming insurance when you default. So insured against any losses as well. The solutions for this are, you know, very, very simple and stuff, and just sit down and one by one basis, and you just start working from there, but leave people in their homes until you come up with a solution. Like I would be trying to encourage everyone, regardless of what situation they're in, stay in their home no matter what, because 9/10 of the law is possession, and only 1/10 is corrupt governance and a judicial system that we have here in Ireland. Again, you have to ask why no one has won a case against any bank in the country, and no bankers are in jail for what has gone on. It's absolutely criminal what has gone on, and you know, the smarter politicians know well what's going on, and then a lot of them are hiding and running away when we're trying to put valuable information into their hands. But there is a few questions have been asked in the PAC committee recently, now I'm not holding my breath for any, you know, great results from it, but they are questions that are to the bone with AIB, PTSB. Like Masling was in there in the PAC committee last week, and you know, he didn't even believe his own statement that he read out at the start, but then he was grilled, and Pierce Doherty gave him a good grilling at the end. But he lied constantly throughout that. Masling, who's the director of PTSB and the head of PTSB in a government position. We've another thing with PTSB there, 17 forged signatures, all the same, all different departments and places around the country and people. And we tried to get the fraud squad onto that, no chance to get it.
So if these banks are committing frauds, why are the guards not doing anything about it?
They just don't understand it. Like if you go to the fraud squad in Dublin, they'll tell you that there's 76 working there, that they're still dealing with things like the Ansbacher and other inquiries, and they've no time for the type of stuff that we're trying to bring forward. Like I've been into the Tralee Garda station numerous occasions over the corruption that has gone here. There was a fraudulent document produced in court in Killarney another day by Bank of Ireland, and I asked the guards to take a copy of the document. They refused point blank to take it, and there was a forged signature on the document that we could prove. There's huge problems in the courts for their litigants, and you know, if we don't have a fair justice system, we have nothing. Like, and it's amazing as well that these judges haven't spoken out about what they're seeing. County registers there are being told horrific stories every day of the week of everyone's unique circumstances. You see people in there absolutely bawling, crying, devastated.
And yet, you say, like a judge would see a person like that in a completely distressed state, on the verge of losing their home, and yet they will still sign this order. I mean, do these people not have a conscience?
There's many cases of suicide, like, and I operate most in the Munster courts. Yeah. I don't go down to Waterford. There's a great bunch of people down there. There's two groups down there that do fantastic work down there. So that court is in good state, so to speak. But like I've seen people in a number of courts where a husband or wife has come in and their partner has committed suicide, and there they are, the partner just after committing suicide, and then they have to face into the troubles that partner is trying to deal with. And that's on a regular basis, and they get a 3-month adjournment, after suicide. And again, if you go back to the very start of this Fiacre Daly case there, he committed suicide. Unbelievable case where the bank even wrote out shortly afterwards demanding the rest of the money. KBC that was, and this has been just continuous over the years in the courts. The level of suicides, there was a big hush in Ennis there recently because there was a fairly high profile man had committed suicide, and no one answering when the case was called and stuff, and then the local solicitor gets up at the back and he said, I believe that man has passed away since. But you'd know that the guards and the rest of them knew, they're the ones going out to all these suicides. They know well what's going on every day of the week. And still, no one kind of come on to our side of the fence to help us. And that's what kind of gets the most people involved in Anti Eviction Task-Force, the level of depression, people really, at the edge of their tether, with a view to commit suicide. There was one lady, she was going to take her 4 kids with her. I could tell you hundreds of stories over the last 5-6 years, and the same with the rest of the crowd in Anti Eviction Task-Force. So luckily some of us in it have gone away and learned skills to deal with kind of the whole emotional pain and depression bit, and that we can put to use every single day of the week. We've some fantastic ladies in the group, who we're trying to bring to the fore to speak out, because if the lads are speaking out, we're kind of seen, as a threat, and they bring in loads of police and stuff like that in the courts, and seen either for people who are going in there for the day into court, into civil court, and there's 20 or 30 guards, so we have scaled back in the amount of courts that we've attended en masse, but we still go regular in the different counties just to try and help people if they're struggling emotionally or with the whole process, and try and point out what can and can't be done. But as I said already, we're at the stage now, no matter even in the Supreme Court, no case is won. So all we can rely on is the paperwork that we constantly lodge in to the legals, the courts, and that we send to the President of the High Court, and Raymond Groark, who's the President of the Circuit Court, Brendan Ryan, who's the CEO of the Court Services, that show that it is a statutory court corporation, private corporation, money-making racket. So we can just lay on the record now that we have been deceived, and leave all that there with them, and try and, from an energy point of view, we see it as kind of like a voodoo doll that we're sticking the sword in them, or the pins in them regular. There has been great progress over the last number of years. There's a lot of difficult questions on the table for the judges and the government at this point in time. But whether they're just going to continue with their agenda or go to the side of the people, that remains to be seen. But the people may need to, come back and push this. It would be fantastic, if we had a good group in every county with an Anti Eviction Task-Force or other, campaigners against the banks, and try and unite all these up. We've proposed solutions here as well. We're not just all about the negative. We've great lads and girls there again. When it comes up that people are left homeless and stuff, they've gone into all cottages and houses and done them up in a period of 4 or 5 days, and moved the family in there into, sad to see a rundown cottage, but, great energy put into it over 3 or 4 days to make it look fairly new, and, beds, bedclothes, different things like that, whatever's required. And it's that's what, keeps all of us going in the Anti Eviction Task-Force, when we see the good people that are, and how good they are at heart.
It gives you some sort of hope, I suppose, doesn't it? I suppose it restores your faith in humanity as well when you see that going on.
Yeah, Irish people are good in a crisis, but they just don't understand the level of crisis that we're actually in, because it's been hidden away from them on RTE.
Well, the mainstream media are doing an absolutely fantastic job of keeping this ongoing misery covered up, particularly the suicide aspect of it.
Yeah, and there's blood on most of the bank's hands here.
Now, that was going to be my next question. If, say, for instance, a father out there of a family who's just lost a home, unfortunately takes his own life. If he left a note clearly stating that he took his own life because of what the banks have done to his family, can the banks not be held liable in that respect? I mean, it's the last man's, will and testament, if you will. He's letting you know what's caused his death.
It's like the bankers have diplomatic immunity, and the same with the barristers. Now, I believe that the Bank of International Settlement is protecting all the bankers. So at this point in time, if someone is struggling for suicide there, I'd ask them to go and contact someone and talk to them, because we've had people that have really, really been on the brink. And, they would be testament now to how a life can change. And, that's what we try and do, is we try and empower the family unit with physical, mental and spiritual support so that we can get them over the worst of it. The level of threat in the letters that the bank and the solicitors and the court send out is absolutely...
Can you tell me, what would the nature of one of those letters be, one of these threatening letters? What would the wording consist of?
Basically, they're giving you, in simple man's terms, they're giving you 7 days to get out of your house when you get your first demand, pay up in full whatever you owe, or get out of your house. And,
it's that blunt.
It's that blunt. At the moment there, we have pretend court messengers going on to people where there's no court order or execution order that has to be got after the court order. And they're going around and they're threatening people, giving them verbally 7 days. And their bank card then is a written name that I feel is made up in a lot of cases. We do know which banks they're obviously working for when they're calling to that house. But a card is a written pencil now and a piece of paper saying who they are and what number to call them on. And, they won't answer the phone to the likes of us. We closed down KBC there in Cork before Christmas, and for me that should be done every single day of the week. Every day that there's a threatened eviction and a family home en masse, it should be into that bank on that day until a solution is created for that family. We're soft as it stands, but it is going to come to a head, because you'd see the numbers are increasing there every quarter. In the last quarter there, it escalated by 24%. The amount of possession orders and evictions, they were literally on a par, the court figures and how many had been evicted. Now, because of the pressure they put on people, an awful lot of people are leaving the keys in the letterbox and just moving out. And the banks the banks in their own possession at the moment have nearly 2,000 homes lying idle and empty.
Just sitting on them.
And for me, again, there's lots more than that, because there's houses I know in Cork there, one family that were evicted 4 years ago, and the house, nothing has ever happened, but it boarded up on the front of it. And those people are still in and out of the house, just kind of opening the back windows and hoping to get brave enough to move back into the house, because when we checked through the court process, there was no execution order. The guards, by the way, didn't know anything about it, even though they were out there on the day 4 years ago. So again, we do stuff that's retrospective as well. If someone has lost their property, we start going back after the people themselves, the directors of the bank. We find that that's the most effective way to start going after them directly, because they obviously don't like hassle. They feel threatened when we're writing to them at their family homes. Like, even if I'm writing to, when Francis Fitzgerald was in charge, Noreen O'Sullivan, writing to their family homes, that's the best way forward for me. But people really need to, it is going to come to their door, unfortunately, and there will be more and more people, but it's the casualties that we'd be concerned about. And again, for me, they've waged war on children, because if there's 90,000 mortgages in arrears, if a third of people in social housing can't pay, we have a huge homeless crisis that absolutely nothing is being done about, with all the blow and talk being done inside in that Crown Oireachtas for the last 6-7 years. They're on their doorstep. Anytime I go to Dublin, I'm horrified.
There's people dying on the bloody doorstep. That's how bad it is in Dublin here, and in Cork as well. There's people dying on the streets of Cork too.
Yeah, there was 13 there in an 8-week period, like between Cork, Dublin, and Galway. Like, you know, like if 13 people were killed in the car crash, it'd be on every paper in the same period of time. Like, and this is what we're suffering in Ireland. It's a huge car crash, and people are just numb and drained of their energy from the whole thing. The negativity.
It's like the fight has been sucked out of the Irish people. Listen, I need to go to one more lad, Brian, so do you mind hanging on for a minute or so?
Yeah.
That'll be great. Folks, we're going to be back in less than a minute with Brian. Talk to us very shortly.
You're listening to Liffey Sound, www.liffeysoundfm.ie. Listen online. Community radio at its best.
Tune in every Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. for Ultrasounds on Liffey Sound 96.4 FM or www.liffeysoundfm.ie.
Have you taken our advice and explored the many attractions in our lovely Liffey Valley? There's so much to enjoy in the Liffey Valley. Lovely parks, riverside walks, historic houses, water sports, children's play areas and much, much more. The Liffey Valley Park Alliance continues its work for the preservation of this marvellous amenity and its picturesque landscapes. You can play your part by using its various facilities. If you have not already done so, start now. You won't regret it.
Danger, danger! If sore necks, ringing in your ears and mosh pits are your thing, check out High Voltage with me, Dave Darcy, for all things rock, metal and punk. Every Monday evening from 7 to 9 on Liffey Sound 96.4 FM.
Danger, danger! High voltage! We will tell us, and we will cheers.
Local programs, local presenters, local news. Tune to Liffey Sound 96.4 FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. The text number is 087 062 7138 if you want to send any text messages in about what we're discussing. The Facebook page is called The World You Don't Know, so go on there, click it, like it, share it, whatever you usually do on Facebook. And we're going to go back to Brian. Brian, a theory I want to put to you that a friend mentioned to me a couple of years ago, and it's in relation to suicide. He said to me, he said, you see all these straight road crashes that you see around the country where, you know, someone unfortunately loses their life by crashing into a barrier or into a pole or into a tree, but on a straight enough road, a decent enough road. He had a theory that a lot of these were probably suicides because he said if you looked into the financial background of some of these victims, they could have serious mortgage difficulties, and if they had to commit suicide in the conventional sense at home, say by using a rope or some other means, the insurance company wouldn't pay out and they wouldn't pay their mortgage, whereas if they were in a crash on any road, well then they would be paid. But what do you think of that theory?
Well, I've done the safe courses and things like that in relation to suicide, which I prefer calling emotional pain, because I feel that's what it is. And they'll tell you even on there that between 25 and 30% are unaccounted for, and these statistics that they have. I just, you know, I have a good understanding, I feel, of the level that people go to. They've only so many resources for coping with emotional pain, and then they go to a place where they kind of have a silent scream, and they don't think that anyone loves them or that they don't shouldn't be loved, and they go into this kind of a numb space where then they don't think rationally, and they make a plan, and they're in a rational space and they just carry out that plan. And you'll see with a lot of people that commit suicide, they try at the last minute to get out of it. You'll see the hands, or, you know...
it's not what they wanted to do.
Yeah, and maybe at the last moment, you know, they see all the things that really do matter, like your children, you know, life itself. We're kept busy with work, when there's no question about quality of life. And, you know, people in Ireland at the moment, like, even though I was working, I get a lot of people up here to the house doing standard financial statements and things like that, who are trying their best to pay the bank, like, and they haven't pittance left if they're earning 600 or 700 euros both a week, like, after they're paying, you know, a mortgage in a handy enough house. Maybe they bought for 200,000 maybe 8-9 years ago, 10 years ago, and they just can't make ends meet, like, and the cost of everything, children back to school, tax, insurance and cars, there's so many driving around without that. There's just, people are just struggling completely and utterly with what monetary they have to make ends meet. So then, if you work hard there all week, and I don't have children myself, but they are hard work, to keep them entertained. And if you have a lad who wants to play soccer and stuff, surely he deserves, the pair of football boots. And the parents are suffering such guilt because they can't put that pair of football boots on the child, or dancing shoes or whatever else. Everyone is entitled to some
small things as well. I might add, small things is all they are.
Yeah,
people are struggling to eat
football club because they haven't the price of it. Like we all, when we were growing up, I'm in my late 40s, and when we were growing up, you had enough to get by, and you had the pair of boots or whatever, and you might have gone for Santa at Christmas or something. But an awful lot of families now can't even put a gift to a child, which the effect that this has in many homes, where there's arguments about money and what to pay the bank this month, things if you were short, or if the washing machine went, or the car or something, you had to put a few quid into that. And the children are just, I was in Limerick Court there in another matter one day, and I said, Jesus, we have failed society completely and utterly, when I saw what went on there. And again, an awful lot of it struggled from money worries and different things like that. So we need change for the better, and it needs to be soon, or there will be far too many casualties.
But so I look at the grand scheme of things, Brian, in all of this, and I'm sure you've done your own research as well. You seem like a very, very smart man. You know what you're talking about in relation to the root causes of all this and what's actually behind it. When you look at the New World Order, there's a lot of people out there who don't believe that's happening. I believe it is. I mean, you just have to look around you and you can see that they're trying to put some sort of a system into place. And one of the big tranches of getting that system into place is to kill off all nation states, and in order to do that, the only way you're going to kill off a nation state is to destroy the family unit within that state. And I look around Ireland and I see what's been going on the last 10-15 years in this country, and that's exactly what's happening.
Well, like, I have a blog there, and unfortunately I don't get enough time to write in it. I used to write a good bit in it a few years ago until I got too busy with what I'm doing and happy doing at the moment. And on the 1st of January 2012, I did put up a post, Agenda 21 Ireland, and a load of my own friends unfriended me on Facebook, something that I used to use at the time. I've kind of given up on it. But they unfriended me because they thought I'd lost the plot, and I have lost the plot, because I thought that you worked hard, which I and many others did, that, because probably from famine times it was kind of drilled into us to get our own house, and that if you have a wife and kids and you have your own home, that's your shelter, that's your comfort, your base, someplace you feel safe. And then you find that, that's under threat. It opens up your eyes to a whole world of pain that you can either manage or you can't manage. And, lucky enough, many people do come through it and come out fighting on the other side, back against the banks. But it's a hard job, because the system, as I said earlier, always goes to violence and stuff. But, you see this going on in other countries as well. And you've heard me mention the Bank of International Settlement there a number of times. You've the Trilateral Commission. Have a look at the bankers that are up the top of those organisations. Have a look at, Goldman Sachs there, the people they have in positions of power in different countries. They had Peter Sutherland here, Mario Monti in Italy, Mario Draghi in the ECB, Papadopoulos in Greece. You can go on and on, how they've orchestrated the system by putting in their own individuals in there. You see Soros regular popping up there and funding things going on here in Ireland and other countries. So, for me, I've no doubt with the whole New World Order thing. You'd see a quote by Brian Cohen there as well, that Ireland would continue to implement depopulation. And Brian Cohen made that comment in public. And the same thing is on the blog.
What did he say? He said Ireland were going to implement depopulation.
Yeah.
And how are they going to go about doing that?
What he said was they were going to continue to implement the UN agenda of depopulation. So that for me was saying, like, they have it done. Like, sure, there's no. If you look at what's going on in the hospitals, have a look at what's going on, on the streets of Ireland. More and more people are just suffering from poverty and dying and won't live long term. You see that, anyone living homeless, they rarely, fellas live till around 40. Ladies live to their own 38. What chance are these children going to have to run the street and in cars and in emergency accommodation? I see a 9-year-old today committed suicide. That is the horrific world that we live in. That a 9-year-old knows about suicide. How sad is that?
It is very, very sad. Can I ask you, Brian? You mentioned earlier on a massive figure of over 3,000 children living in emergency accommodation, substandard accommodation, even in a lot of cases, small rooms and stuff like that. Do you think the future for those children is a future of ongoing homelessness in and out of different places, in and out of different flats and stuff like that?
It is for now until we wake up. For me, there's plenty of solutions. There's thousands and thousands of houses. You look around the country empty. There's houses. I went down to Prudential Island one time, which is only a small little place, and there's loads and loads of houses, stone cottages and things that our grandparents were living in.
Oh, you heard a figure of 250,000 houses empty?
Yeah, in the whole of Ireland, there's 350,000 empty houses.
350,000 empty houses, and we have people living on the streets. 11
million in Europe, and this is a problem going on in every country. So, the solutions are there, and that's without holiday homes. I hear them always on this whole building bubble and stuff like that. Whereas I prefer to see them regenerate houses and there's plenty of lads that worked on the buildings and things on the door there. Take them off the door there and give them an extra couple of hundred each. Do up these houses. I saw a fantastic project there in Wales, the Hedgehog Co-op, where 10 different families went in and built 10 houses with the help of the council, which you won't get here. We are going to try something similar shortly to see if we can gain any traction with it as a solution and try and do a show and tell with it. But they built 10 houses, Seagal homes they're called, and you want to see the finished product. They had to work 30 hours a week on it now, which was a bit much for the people who built the development, because they were trying to hold down full-time jobs and do their 30 hours, which was again awkward. So, if you introduce something like that here, you could have 15 or 20 hours a week. When we have a house to do up there with Anti Eviction Task-Force, we get loads of ladies and fellas from all around the country who are willing to chip in. So, if we could kind of start working in that manner and quickly do a show and tell of solutions in one area, and then show this to everyone and say, look here, this was how this was done, this was what it cost. There's 10 homes for 10 families in the rural areas, but also that we regenerate the houses that are there. And I'm not saying that the government take over these houses. I'm saying that there has to be an agreement put in place with the families who own the home. A lot of houses are lying idle because they were left to people in wills and things like that, and they can't afford the capital gains, they can't afford to do it up, to rent it out. And again, there's no help there for any of them. If they're broke and struggling, literally the house they're gifted.
So do you think that's deliberately part of the overall plan, that like all these people who are inheriting homes around the country that you say they're sitting on because they can't afford to pay the capital gains tax on them or inheritance tax or do the houses up or get them ready to rent out or anything like that, do you think it's all deliberate?
Totally and utterly. Even if you look at what houses were sold in the country last year or mortgaged, 20% of them were loans, 80% were cash. So who do you think is buying them?
Vulture funds.
They want the ones in Dublin, Cork, Galway, towns like my own Killarney. You'd see them snapped up, and there's a few decent estates here in Killarney, and there's 12 and 14 people living in the house.
Is there many ghost estates down in the Kerry region?
There's a good few ghost estates. There's one not 500 yards from Healy Ray's pub in Kilgarvan and empty for 10 years. and nothing done with it. And you think them two donkeys down there would try and force something to get that ghost state up and running.
Oh, well, them two are too busy arguing in the Oireachtas about stuff that doesn't matter anyway.
They're around, you'd see Michael Healy, but he was in there, by the way, pretending he had won the Allsaps actions, and he buying houses out of it then a couple of weeks later. The same here with holiday homes he has and things like that are only supposed to be holiday homes, and he's tenants and all them, and he has them on the HAP scheme. And, I've put them under savage pressure, but I've given up completely on any of them. The other TDs in my area are of no help to us either, who are Sinn Féin, Fianna Gael and Fianna Fáil. Absolutely no help. Again, like, it's hurtful to see these people because the public trust them so much, or the ballot boxes are so corrupt maybe, but they never, there's no solutions for the people.
Well, they won't. I mean, the Oireachtas is not there to offer solutions. As you call yourself earlier on, it's the Crown Oireachtas, so they're operating to a completely different agenda to what the Irish people need happening. I mean, they're not there for the Irish people, they're there for the British Crown. Yeah,
and like you'll see that day in, day out, the whole court process is a Crown operation. You'd see a lot of the orders that the banks get, they apply in the court in the Irish name, and you'd see that the order then is sneakily in the UK name. I'd wonder the same about the bailout. Did it go to, AIB? Did it go to a different bank for them? Because a lot of orders come out in the UK name.
It'd make you wonder, Ollie. Brian, unfortunately, you've come up to the end of the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a blast having you on. You've been an absolute wealth of information. Do you want to just give a little bit of a chat about your upcoming appearance at the Open Minds Conference in Dooley's Hotel in Waterford?
Yeah, I'll be showing kind of footage from some of the evictions that we've been involved in, and then I'll be giving kind of an insight into who's who and where it leads to, and I think people will be shocked at where it leads to, and the level of corruption within the judiciary, what they're involved in, and for me there has to be some solutions offered, and I will offer some solutions at the end of the talk, because things are so negative. Without hope we would have nothing, I do hope every day that things will change in the morning.
Well, hopefully, we hope for a better future for all of our children, and put an end to this bloody misery this country's been going through for the last few years. Listen, Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and unfortunately I'm not going to see you on the Friday because I'm not going to make it down to Waterford on the Friday due to family commitments, but I hope to see you there over the weekend if you're still there on the Sunday.
Yeah, but, I'm hoping to be there for the weekend.
That's brilliant. Well, listen, thanks very much for coming on. I really appreciate it, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll talk to you again soon. I'll have the podcast up tomorrow and I'll send you a link.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks very much. Talk to you again soon. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was Brian McCarthy from the Anti Eviction Task-Force. Very interesting subjects they talked about tonight. If any of you are out there are affected by mortgage difficulties, don't sit at home thinking there's nothing that can be done about it. There are people out there who are willing to help you. People like the Hub, people like the Anti Eviction Task-Force. Get in touch with them. Don't suffer in silence. Anyway, folks, this has been The World You Don't Know. Remember, the world is full of great people. If you can't find one, be one. Talk to you all again soon.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths,
Breaking humanity, one soul at a time. This is The World You Don't Know radio show with your host, Nick O'Connell.